Listen closely, because this story starts with a crash that looks like the end of everything. It is 3:17 in the morning. The air over Lake Michigan is freezing, and a Bentley tears through a guardrail before plunging into the black water. The accident is violent, but the real damage is not just metal and bone. By sunrise, every corner of the Chicago underworld has heard the news. Alessandro Romano, the man who ruled the North Side through fear for 15 years, is paralyzed from the waist down. Small-time criminals start celebrating, thinking the wolf has finally been caged. But men like Alessandro do not stop being dangerous because their bodies are wounded. They simply learn a darker way to keep control. Now go back 4 months, because that is where the real sickness begins. Alessandro sits in his 40th floor office with a glass of untouched 25-year-old scotch on the desk. Through the crack in the door, he watches his own half-brother, Raphael, arrange the sabotage of his car. Most men would panic if they heard their own murder being planned. Alessandro does not move. He listens, cold and silent, studying his assassination as if it is another business problem to solve. Now he is in the hospital, pretending to be broken, while his girlfriend Isabella sits beside the bed and cries with perfect timing. The people standing closest to him are not there to save him. They are waiting for him to fall. Isabella's performance is almost too polished. Her tears fall without ruining her makeup, and her expensive Chanel perfume nearly covers the smell of disinfectant in the hospital room. Alessandro lies still and watches her, remembering the way she secretly held Raphael's hand the year before. Then 39-year-old Dr. Nathan Brooks clears the room. The moment the door closes, the miracle happens. Alessandro stretches his legs with complete control. He is not paralyzed at all. The plan begins, he says, calm as stone. Nathan looks terrified because he knows prison is waiting if this gets exposed. Alessandro does not care. The injury is fake. But the test is real, and everyone around him is already walking into it. Alessandro's paranoia has gone far beyond instinct. He knew about the sabotage for weeks and quietly rigged his own vehicle with a hidden air tank so he could survive the crash. When Raphael realized the crash had not killed him, he tried to keep Alessandro trapped in a hospital bed. But by pretending to be paralyzed, Alessandro turns the trap back on everyone else. He tells Nathan that 3 months earlier, someone inside his crew sold out 3 of his best men. Now he wants to see who moves when they believe the boss is helpless. Nathan stands there sweating, finally understanding the kind of man he is dealing with. Alessandro does not want comfort. He wants names. While Alessandro begins his silent war, the story moves 40 miles north to a 12-acre estate, where we meet Emma. She is 24, exhausted, and paid to scrub floors for people who barely look at her. Her life has been one loss after another. She lost her father at 8, survived a violent stepfather, and watched her mother give up when Emma was only 15. After that, the foster system swallowed her whole. At 18, she aged out with a cheap bag and $87. That kind of life does not make someone fearless in a pretty way. It teaches them to keep moving even when fear is already sitting in their chest. That is why Emma can walk into Alessandro's nightmare without flinching. Emma took the job 7 months earlier because she was broke, and 4 times her usual pay was impossible to refuse. But the estate turned out to be another kind of prison. The head housekeeper, 58-year-old Marguerite, decided almost immediately that Emma would get the worst work in the house. Emma did what she had always done. She shut down, kept her head low, and survived. When the news spreads that Alessandro is paralyzed, the staff panics. They know his temper, and no one wants to be near him. Emma just keeps folding laundry. In 7 months, she has seen him only 3 times. To her, he is not a legend. He is another storm passing over a house that was never safe to begin with. 2 hours later, Marguerite pulls Emma aside and gives her the job everyone else is desperate to avoid: round-the-clock care for the crippled mob boss. She calls it an honor, smiling that small, cruel smile, but everyone in the room understands what it really is. She expects Emma to break. She expects tears, fear, maybe even a resignation. Emma gives her none of that. Quitting would mean losing the roof over her head. And Emma has learned that survival comes before pride. She simply asks when she starts. Marguerite snaps. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. That night, Emma stands outside and looks up at Alessandro's window. knowing another hard chapter is waiting behind that glass. At exactly 6 the next morning, Emma stands outside a massive oak door with a cold breakfast tray in her hands. Marguerite delayed her in the kitchen for 40 minutes on purpose, just to make sure the meal would be ruined before Emma arrived. When a voice finally orders her inside, it sounds rough and sharp, like crushed glass. Emma steps into darkness. Alessandro has blocked out the sun, turning the room into a stale cave of medicine, sweat, and bitterness. As her eyes adjust, she sees him in his wheelchair with his back turned. He has built an entire world out of shadows, and he is waiting for the next person to disappoint him. This is the first moment their dynamic changes. Emma walks in with the tray, and Alessandro barks at her to set it down and leave, treating her like she is barely human. The food is cold. For most people, that would be a small thing. For Emma, who grew up hungry in the foster system, a cold meal carries a different weight. Instead of apologizing and running, she looks at him and says the breakfast is unacceptable. Then she offers to replace it, slowly. The paralyzed kingpin turns his wheelchair toward her. The room tightens. Emma has not challenged him loudly, but she has refused to collapse. That alone is enough to catch his attention. Before the accident, Alessandro could control a room just by breathing. Now he is pretending to be a wounded animal trapped in a chair. When his dead eyes land on Emma, he demands to know who she is. Thrown off by the fact that she is not trembling, she tells him she has worked in his house for 7 months and points out that he never bothered to notice his own staff. In his world, that kind of honesty can get a person buried at the bottom of a river. But instead of exploding, he goes still. Something about her refusal to play the victim interrupts his usual rhythm. For the first time in days, someone has surprised him. 15 minutes later, Emma returns with a hot meal. Having gone around the kitchen staff completely, Alessandro watches every move she makes. Searching for fear, he finds none. In a house where people either worship him, fear him, or plot against him, Emma is something he cannot sort into a familiar box. She does not flirt, flatter, or shrink. She treats him like a difficult man in a bad mood, not like a king. He asks for her name. Emma Caldwell, she says. He repeats it quietly, turning it over in his mind like a clue. She nods and leaves. He sits in the dark, ignoring the food, already more interested in her than he wants to be. Alessandro has spent years watching people bend around his temper. Emma does not bend, and that bothers him more than open defiance would. He wants to know where her limits are. Then Isabella enters and ruins the silence with a performance of grief. The expensive heels, the careful makeup, the soft voice, all of it is staged. Alessandro watches her without warmth. Their engagement is not love. It is a business arrangement meant to secure shipping routes worth $300 million a year. In their world, romance is usually another contract with prettier lighting, but now, with Emma still fresh in his mind, Isabella's act feels colder than usual. Isabella kneels beside him like the perfect future wife, voice trembling as she offers him a diamond ring. To anyone else, it looks tender. To Alessandro, it looks like a weapon. He recognizes the ring for what it really is, a military-grade acoustic transmitter, the kind of hardware connected to an O'Brien family hit 2 years earlier. He does not react. His breathing stays even. His face stays empty. He simply lets the truth settle. The woman he is supposed to marry is helping his enemies listen to him. Isabella keeps crying, convinced she is fooling a broken man, never realizing that the man in the chair is studying every breath she takes. Isabella talks about sending him to a quiet clinic in Zurich. Her voice is gentle, but Alessandro hears the cage inside the offer. Then Emma walks in, and Isabella's softness vanishes almost instantly. She turns on the maid with casual cruelty, cutting her down as if it costs nothing. Emma pours the water without shaking. Alessandro notices the small tightening in her jaw and the way she refuses to react. He understands restraint when he sees it. To test Isabella, he quietly asks what will happen if he stays paralyzed forever. The room seems to hold its breath. Isabella smiles at him, but something behind her eyes is already slipping. Isabella gives a perfect speech about love and loyalty, but Alessandro has spent 20 years reading liars, and for one brief second, her mask fails. Disgust flashes across her face as she looks at his legs. She does not see a future husband. She sees an obstacle between herself and his fortune. From the corner of the room, Emma sees it too. Alessandro and the maid lock eyes for half a second, and neither of them speaks. They have both recognized the same predator. Isabella smooths her dress, completely unaware that the two people she considers beneath her have just understood something about her. The silence between them becomes the first fragile thread of trust. Isabella leaves Sandro with a kiss so cold it feels rehearsed, already checking her phone before the door closes. Then Raphael comes in. He wears an absurdly expensive suit and a smile that cannot hide his hunger. Sandro lets his half-brother pretend to care. There is a sad truth buried under Raphael's arrogance. Their father only worshipped his dead first wife, and Raphael grew up feeling like the unwanted replacement, the lesser son, the mistake no one quite forgave. That kind of rejection does not disappear just because a boy becomes a man. It hardens into envy, and envy turns family into something dangerous. Raphael sits beside Sandro with brotherly concern painted across his face, but his eyes keep moving. He notices the desk, the safe, the laptop that controls $500 million. He is not looking at his injured brother. He is measuring what might soon belong to him. He says they need to be realistic. He talks about nervous soldiers, rival families, and the risk of weakness. Every sentence sounds like concern, but the shape underneath is clear. He wants Sandro to step aside. Sandro listens quietly and lets Raphael keep talking. The more Raphael speaks, the more he reveals. And Sandro has always preferred enemies who mistake silence for defeat. Raphael lowers his voice and offers a takeover as if it is an act of mercy. Just sign over the power, he says in careful words. Let someone strong handle the family until things settle. Sandro shuts him down. He says he will run the empire from a wheelchair if he has to. For a second, Raphael's mask cracks. Rage flashes through his eyes because the prize has slipped out of reach again. Then he recovers, whispers that family comes first, and spends 20 more minutes pretending to be loyal. Sandro lets him. He has spent his life around men with guns, but betrayal from the familiar face across the bed cuts in a quieter way. Raphael ends by using their father's memory against him, twisting old wounds into pressure. When he leaves, his footsteps carry the anger of a man denied what he came to claim. The moment the doors close, Sandro drops the helpless act. He dials an untraceable number from memory and orders Nathan to sneak in after midnight. In the fading light, he stares at the empty chair Raphael just left behind. Something in him goes colder. Whatever grief he feels, he locks it away before it can slow him down. In Sandro's world, pain is only useful if it can be turned into strategy. Nathan slips in after dark with a decoy medical bag and a file thick enough to change the room. He warns Sandro that Raphael and Isabella are circling from different sides. But the real danger is older than both of them. Sandro opens the file and sees the first crack in Isabella's life story. Her college records are manufactured. Her family history has been polished clean. Then Nathan shows him the Irish birth certificate. Isabella Marrow is not Isabella Marrow. Her real name is O'Brien. Sandro sits very still. He has shared meals, beds and secrets with a woman built to destroy him. Isabella is Declan O'Brienis, raised inside a family that taught her the Romanos were not people but an old debt waiting to be collected. She built her false identity at 18 and waited years for the right door to open. Sandro studies her photograph and sees the same cold eyes that cried beside his hospital bed. He has been sleeping beside the enemy for 2 years. The cruelest part is that Raphael thinks he is using Isabella to take the throne. In reality, O'Brien is using both brothers to tear the family apart from inside, and if Sandro moves too soon, Emma, Raphael, and every loyal man in the house may die before morning. The plan is simple and vicious. Feed Raphael's resentment. Let him help weaken Sandro. Then discard him once he has served his purpose. Isabella would play the grieving widow. O'Brien would move in, and the Romano Empire would bleed out before anyone understood how it happened. The crash came from an O'Brien mechanic, but Raphael gave the approval. The ambush that cost Sandro 3 men happened because Isabella leaked the location from his own bed. Sandro closes the folder. His face does not change, but something behind his eyes goes dead. Nathan quietly reminds him that Raphael is still his blood. Sandro's jaw tightens. My parents are dead. He says, I am alone. For all Raphael has done, he is still Sandro's last family. Sandro knows his brother is not the mastermind, he is bait. Wounded pride wrapped around a loaded gun. Once O'Brien gets what he wants, Raphael will die too, so Sandro chooses patience over rage. He lets Raphael feel bold. He lets Isabella think the transmitter is working. He gives Maggie the staff, and every whispering traitor enough room to expose themselves. Then the door opens. Emma walks in with fresh towels, quiet as ever. But Sandro catches the smallest hesitation in her step. A pause, a breath held too long. She has heard something. And now she is in danger before she even knows why. Sandro has enemies circling and a brother slipping deeper into a trap. So he decides trust a luxury he cannot afford. In his mind, loyalty is not assumed. It is tested until it either breaks or proves itself. On the second day, he throws a violent tantrum, smashing porcelain against the walls to see if Emma will flinch. She does not. He snaps insults, knocks things over, and watches her face for weakness. Emma simply kneels and sweeps up the shards, careful not to cut herself. He thinks he is applying pressure. He does not understand that Emma grew up under worse pressure than this. His cruelty feels familiar to her, not frightening. Sandro keeps pushing. He knocks his pills onto the floor, demands water in the middle of the night, and speaks to Emma with the sharp precision of a man trying to find a wound. She gives him nothing useful. No tears, no anger, no plea to be reassigned. Her silence starts to unsettle him because it denies him the reaction he expects. By the seventh night, the control he clings to begins to crack. The crash returns in his sleep. Metal screams. Glass cuts inward. Black water pours over him, freezing and endless. He is no longer the feared boss of Chicago. He is trapped in the Bentley again, drowning in the dark. He wakes gasping, one hand clawing at his chest as if the lake is still pressing down on him. Across the room, under the warm glow of a lamp, Emma sits quietly with a battered paperback in her lap. She looks as if she has been there for hours. Sandro panics because he hates being witnessed in weakness. His temper rises before his breathing steadies. He snaps at her, asking why she is still there when her shift ended long ago. Emma does not blink. She says his nightmares come at almost the same time every night. The words are plain, not dramatic, and that makes them harder for him to dismiss. Emma tells him she thought he might need someone nearby. Sandro searches her face for calculation. In his world, kindness always has a price. He reminds her she is not being paid for this. So why stay? Emma answers softly that everyone deserves someone to notice when they are suffering, even people who pretend they cannot be touched. The answer slips past defenses he did not know were tired. It brings back the memory of his mother in a New York garden, her hands smelling of soil, her voice warning him not to let power turn him into his father. Sandro has buried that voice for years. Emma has somehow brought it back. His mother died when he was 14 and left him with a father who believed tenderness was weakness. Sandro learned fast. He buried her lessons with her casket and built himself into something colder. Yet here is Emma, a quiet maid with tired eyes, speaking to the part of him he thought had been killed off long ago. It unnerves him. He tells her to go home, and for the first time his voice almost breaks. At the door, she says the nightmares get easier with time. When she leaves, Sandro immediately reaches for his laptop and opens the hidden camera feeds across the city. He is still bleeding, but paranoia is the bandage he knows best. The footage pulls him into another kind of guilt. He opens a recording from 10 months earlier, at the funeral of Raphael's mother. Sandro had been secretly paying $15,000 a month for her care, making sure she had dignity because once she had tried to be kind to him. On the screen, Raphael stands alone as the casket passes, hollowed out by grief. Sandro is there too, but only in the shadows at the back of the church, watching from a distance. He paid the bills, but he did not step forward. He gave money when his brother needed a hand on his shoulder. In the video, Sandro sits frozen in the back pew, unable or unwilling to cross the room. Later that night, Another camera catches Raphael in a tavern, trying to bury grief under cheap bourbon. Then Isabella Morrow appears. She does not rush him. She notices the wound first, then moves toward it. She touches his arm, leans close, and gives him exactly what he has wanted to hear since childhood: that he matters, that he has been overlooked, that he deserves more. Raphael is not stupid, but grief makes him soft in all the wrong places. Isabella does not seduce him all at once. She lets him believe she understands him. Isabella is frightening because she studies weakness before she uses it. She digs through Raphael's past and feeds it back to him as intimacy. She gives him the validation his father never did, and the warmth Sandro never knew how to offer. Then she tightens the trap with hormone injections and a fake positive pregnancy test. On the tape, Raphael breaks down in tears. She promises him a child, a legacy, a place where he will finally be a real Romano. Sandro watches them choose paint colors for a nursery that will never exist, and the image lands harder than he expects. Raphael was not only greedy, he was starving. For the first time, Sandro lets himself see his part in it. He treated Raphael like a burden, kept him at arm's length, and left him open for someone like Isabella to step in. As the sun rises, he makes a decision that feels almost impossible. He will try to save the brother who tried to kill him. Meanwhile, Isabella's patience is fading, now that her hooks are deep. Her hospital visits become short weekend chores. She is tired of pretending, and even her fake tenderness has begun to crack. Sandro watches it all and knows the clock is moving. He may have finally chosen his brother, but he may have chosen him too late. Every surveillance clip of Isabella makes the truth clearer. She comes in like a woman checking an errand off a list and leaves before the hour is up. Sandro already knows she is sleeping with a rival boss, but he lets the house believe he is losing strength. Then there is Emma, and the contrast is impossible to ignore. When Sandro's migraines hit, his jaw locks and he can barely breathe. Emma does not make a scene. She dims the lights, brings water, and leaves before he can thank her. The next morning, he says nothing, but a better medical textbook appears on her desk with no note attached. Emma notices the book and understands he is behind it, but she does not mention it. Sandro notices that she keeps it hidden under her apron during breaks. Neither of them says the obvious. Their closeness grows in small, quiet pieces, the kind neither one knows how to name. On a rainy Tuesday, she finds him staring at a faded photograph from 1988. A young woman stands in a garden, smiling beside rows of tomato plants. Sandro does not hide the picture fast enough. For once, the boss lowers his guard instead of reaching for anger. He looks at Emma and says quietly, "That's my mother." Sandro begins to speak about his mother, slowly at first, as if the words are rusty. He tells Emma how she begged him to keep his heart in a world built on cruelty. Emma listens, then asks the question he has spent years avoiding. Did he keep that promise? Sandro does not pretend. He says there is blood on his hands, and that he cannot imagine what his mother would see if she looked at him now. Emma pulls a chair across from him, breaking every rule of distance in the house. She tells him his mother would see the monster, yes. But not only that, she would also see the frightened boy still buried underneath. For a moment, Sandro looks like a man standing too close to an open wound. He wants to reach for Emma, but every instinct he has warns him not to need anyone, so he changes the subject and asks about her dream of becoming a nurse. Emma shuts down, saying miracles do not happen for people like her. Sandro pushes back, not with a speech, but with a quiet promise that she will take the entrance exam if she still wants it. Then he tells her to stop calling him Mr. Romano. When she finally says Sandro, there is no fear in it, no angle, just recognition. That is what frightens him most. Now Sandro is facing the one kind of danger he cannot control: attachment. If Emma matters to him, she becomes a target. In his world, affection is not soft. It is leverage. Then Friday comes, and circumstance traps them together. The staff is gone. The doctors are delayed, and Emma has to help dress the man everyone believes is paralyzed. She handles the moment with quiet respect. No pity, no embarrassment. She helps him the way a nurse would help a patient, giving him as much dignity as the situation allows. Sandro keeps playing the role, but for the first time, the lie feels heavier than useful. Emma kneels to adjust his clothes and then her hand brushes his leg. The room seems to stop. She does not feel weak, wasted muscle. She feels strength. Solid, controlled, living strength. Not the body of a man trapped in a wheelchair, but the body of a man who has been walking in secret. Her hand freezes against his thigh. She looks up, and the betrayal in her eyes lands before she says a word. Sandro knows there is no way to pull the mask back on. For one suffocating second, neither of them moves. The whole performance collapses because of one accidental touch. Sandro does not panic. He has survived too much to waste energy on panic. He simply looks at Emma and says she knows the truth now. She stumbles back, voice shaking as she says he can walk. Sandro exhales, stands and admits it. The wheelchair, the paralysis, the helplessness, all of it was staged. Then he gives her the world behind the lie. The intercepted calls, the rigged crash, Raphael's betrayal, Isabella's real bloodline, O'Brien's plan to destroy them all. He explains it like strategy, because strategy is the only language he trusts. But Emma is not hearing strategy. She is hearing every private moment between them turn uncertain. When Sandro finishes, the room is heavy with silence. Emma stands near the window in her uniform, pale and still. The difference between them has never felt sharper. He is the powerful man who built the lie. She is the woman who cared for him inside it. Her voice goes flat when she realizes the nightmares, the late nights, the gentleness she offered him. All of it happened inside a performance he controlled. Even the textbook on her desk now feels complicated. Sandro sees the damage too late. He wanted her loyalty, but somewhere along the way, he took something more fragile than that from her. Her accusation cuts deeper than he expects. Sandro looks at the woman who comforted an injury he faked, and finally sees the cruelty of what he has done. Then he stands fully, no longer hiding behind the chair. Emma gasps as he rises to his full height. He stays back, careful not to crowd her, and tells her everyone else was a test. But she became different. He does not say he loves her directly, not yet. But the meaning is there in the wreckage between them. His plan worked on his enemies and failed on his own heart. Emma absorbs it all, wounded and silent. Then she turns and walks out without giving him the relief of an answer. Emma moves down the back stairs like someone leaving her own body behind. She passes the other maids, the polished floors, the perfect roses outside the windows, and barely sees any of it. The man she stayed awake for, the man she thought she was reaching, had been using her inside a lie. Her tears had become part of his test. Logic tells her to run. Her heart does not move that quickly. She remembers his mother's photo, the book left without a note, the broken look after his nightmares, the way his voice changed when he said her name. The truth has shattered everything, but it has not erased every real thing inside it. By the pond, Emma sits in the cold and tries to make sense of him. She has survived enough to recognize danger. Yet a wounded part of her keeps searching for the pieces that felt real. She tells herself Sandro lied because his enemies were closing in. She tells herself the fear in his eyes was not fake. She tells herself she is not like the others to him. Then she hates herself for wanting that to be true. None of these thoughts are clean, but hurt rarely thinks cleanly. When someone builds a false reality around you, the truth does not simply free you. It leaves you deciding which memories were lies and which ones were only trapped inside them. The Chicago night fades toward a pale dawn, and Emma makes the choice that changes her life. She walks back upstairs, ignoring every survival instinct that tells her to leave. Sandro is out of the wheelchair, sitting in an armchair with messy hair and dark circles under his eyes. He looks less like a kingpin than a man who has not slept in years. When he sees her, he does not smile. He only whispers that she came back, as if he had no right to expect it. Emma looks at him for a long moment and promises to keep his secret. She says she is not doing it because she is afraid. Maybe that is true. Maybe fear has simply learned to wear another name. Emma tells herself she is choosing the good still buried in him. She tells herself Sandro is not only the lie, not only the violence, not only the control. Sandro stands and promises absolute honesty from that moment on. A dangerous promise from a man who has survived by hiding everything. Then he does something small that matters more than a speech. He places the hidden medical textbook between them and says he should have asked before trying to help. Emma looks at it, then at him. He holds out his hand, but does not pull her closer. She chooses the final step herself. Morning light spreads across the room as her invisibility becomes a weapon. Emma moves through the criminal world in her maid uniform, and people keep making the same mistake. They treat the help like furniture, so they speak too freely around her. Within 3 days, she notices something wrong. Maggie, the head housekeeper, is hiding a burner phone beneath her inventory clipboards, late one night. Emma hears Maggie telling someone that Emma is getting too close and needs to be removed. Emma swallows her panic and keeps walking. Then she moves a specific book in the library, the signal she and Sandro agreed on. By 4 a.m, Sandro's men are inside the house, silently breaking into the hidden phone. The phone exposes the rot inside Sandro's own walls. Maggie is taking money from Raphael. And worse, she has been feeding information to the O'Brien family. Sandro does not remove her immediately. That would warn everyone too soon. Instead, he feeds Maggie false information and watches where it travels. The trap tightens quietly, one lie at a time. But his next order reveals how little his fear has changed. Emma is to be watched around the clock. He says it is protection. And part of him means it. But protection and possession sit dangerously close in his world. 3 days later, Isabella storms into the estate in a red coat, furious enough to stop pretending. Isabella finds Emma in the library and drags her into a confrontation meant to put her back in place. Her jealousy is not romantic. It is territorial. Sharpened by years of being trained to treat affection as weakness and weakness as a doorway. She cannot stand that a maid, someone she considers beneath notice, has become important to Sandro. She mocks Emma's lack of money, lack of family, lack of name. To Isabella, every relationship is a transaction, and Emma is nothing but a servant who forgot her position. Emma does not shrink. She stands still, mouth tight, eyes steady. Her silence is the kind of armor built by years of being insulted by people who expected her to disappear. Words are not enough for Isabella. She slaps Emma so hard the sound cuts through the room. Emma's mouth splits, but she stays upright. No tears, no begging. Isabella leaves her with a death threat and walks away as if she has won. And Sandro, the man who sees almost everything, watches through a hidden camera. His fury is immediate, his hands close into fists. But he cannot step in without exposing the lie he built so carefully. Worse, his first flash of anger is not pure concern. It is possession. Someone touched what he now thinks of as his. The cage he built around everyone else has begun closing around him too. Sandro stays in the wheelchair and keeps the mask in place, even as rage burns under his skin. When Emma brings his tea, he notices the bruise on her cheek before she can turn away. He tells her not to let anyone bully her. Her answer is quiet enough to hurt. She says she is used to it. Something in him shifts. Sandro has spent most of his life seeing people as threats, tools, debts, or leverage. But the light on Emma's injured face makes that old way of thinking feel suddenly thin. He has protected territory, money, and power. He has never really protected a person simply because she mattered. That night, Sandro drops the paralyzed act and walks down the back stairs into a basement he has ignored for 15 years. The air smells of cheap soap, dust, and damp walls. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead. This is not the polished world where he rules from leather chairs and marble floors. This is Emma's reality. He finds her door by the neat handwriting on the label. When she opens it, her first reaction is not fear for herself. She whispers that he needs to hide. Even bruised, even betrayed, she is still trying to protect him. Sandro steps into the tiny room and sees the medical books on her desk marked with cheap highlighter. The room tells him more than Emma ever has. It is spare, careful, and painfully clean. The books show what she is trying to build after 12-hour shifts on aching feet. A way out. A life that belongs to her. Sandro finally sees. Not the maid. Not the useful witness. But the woman who has been quietly fighting for a future no one handed her. He apologizes for what Isabella did. Emma, somehow, still tells him to protect his cover and go back upstairs. Sandro reaches out, hands unsteady, and touches the bruise on her face. He tells her she is strong. Not hard strong. The difference makes her eyes fill. Emma starts crying, but not only because of the slap. She cries because she has spent 24 years being invisible, and someone has finally looked closely enough to see what it cost her to survive. Sandro pulls her into a careful hug, for once. There is no strategy in it. He admits how broken he is, how much of himself he locked away to become the man everyone fears. Emma feels his heart hammering against her. The feared wolf of Chicago is terrified, not of bullets or rivals, but of losing the one person who still makes him feel human. He offers her safety when the bloodshed ends. Emma does not ask for luxury. She only asks him to stay alive. When Sandro tells Emma he loves her, the words come out rough, almost unwilling, as if they have had to fight their way through years of silence. Emma does not answer immediately. She looks at the man who lied to her, then at the man standing in front of her with no armor left, and says he is worth saving if he chooses to become someone who can be saved. For a few minutes, the basement feels separate from the empire above them. Then Sandro walks back upstairs to resume the lie, and the warmth fades behind him. He knows exactly what loving Emma means. She is now the cleanest target his enemies could choose. Sandro believes he can move every piece before anyone else sees the board. Because Emma is his most obvious weakness, he assigns a man to shadow her. He tells himself it is protection, not control. He even tries to keep the surveillance far enough away that it will not make her feel trapped. For a few days, it works. Emma goes to the kitchen, the library, the basement, and the garden without seeing the guard who follows from a distance. Then broken systems fail at the worst possible moment. 1 week later, the guard is pulled away for an emergency. The backup never arrives, and Emma walks to her car alone. The estate is quiet, the night too still, and by the time Emma senses movement behind her, 2 masked men are already rushing in. She is not helpless. Her past trained her body to move before panic could freeze it. She drives an elbow into one man's throat and slams the other hard enough to make him stagger. For a few seconds, she almost wins. Then the third attacker steps out from her blind side and strikes the back of her head with something heavy. The world flashes white, then disappears. When Emma wakes, she is tied to a chair in a freezing, rusted basement. Across from her sits an older man in a cheap suit, still as a statue. The man is Declan O'Brien. Passing him on the street, you might mistake him for a tired accountant. Up close, there is nothing harmless about him. His hair is neat, his clothes plain, and his pale green eyes are empty in a way that makes the room colder. When he speaks, his West Belfast accent lands hard. He tells Emma the Romano wolf has finally found a weakness. Emma tries to hold her voice steady and insists she is only a maid. O'Brien gives a dry laugh. Housekeepers, he says, do not receive 3 a.m. visits in the master bedroom. He has been watching for longer than she knew, and he knows exactly where to press. Then the door opens, and Isabella walks in. The designer grief is gone. She wears black jeans, a tactical holster, and the expression of someone finally free to show her real face. She looks Emma over and explains the endgame without hurry. Sandro has 48 hours to hand over everything. It will not save him. It will not save Emma. It will not save Raphael either. Emma understands then that Raphael has no idea he is helping the people who plan to erase his own family. Isabella smiles at that. But there is history under the cruelty. She was raised on stories of Romano blood, Romano betrayal, Romano debt. To her, this is not madness. It is inheritance. O'Brien gives a small nod, and one of his men hits Emma hard enough to shatter her cheekbone. Pain explodes through her face. Her eye swells almost shut. Blood fills her mouth. Still, she refuses to scream. She spits back that they can kill her if they want. But Sandro will come and end them. Even O'Brien pauses at that. Her certainty unsettles him more than fear would have. Instead of sending a video, he takes a photo of her ruined face and sends it to Sandro. At 9:04 p.m., Sandro looks down at his phone, and the world narrows to one image. For the first time in years, terror gets through cleanly. Raphael, meanwhile, is still walking blindly through the trap made for him. The next afternoon, he parks his black Porsche outside the warehouse, expecting another routine meeting. He has been there before and feels, in his own damaged way, like a man finally close to power. as he climbs the rusty iron stairs. He hears voices through a door left slightly open. Isabella is speaking to a man with a thick accent Raphael knows from old family nightmares. West Belfast. The same accent his father used when speaking about Declan O'Brien, the enemy who had haunted the Romanos for decades. Raphael stops breathing. Through the crack in the door, Raphael hears Isabella call O'Brien her uncle. The word hits him like a bullet. She tells him that once Sandro is dead, they can throw Raphael away. O'Brien asks if Raphael might cause trouble. Isabella laughs, not the sweet polished laugh Raphael knows, but something sharp and ugly. She says Raphael was easy because he was hungry, and hungry men mistake poison for bread. Then she says her uncle taught her well. Love is only useful when it can be aimed. Raphael stands in the hallway, unable to move. Every tender word she ever gave him begins to rot in his memory. Then she talks about the fake pregnancy. Raphael's legs nearly give out. Isabella brags about the hormone injections, the false test, the nursery. The way he cried because he believed he was finally going to be a father. For 1 second, her voice almost hardens into something older than cruelty, as if she is repeating lessons drilled into her since childhood. Then the softness vanishes, and she says she had to hide in the bathroom to laugh. Each word tears another piece out of him. The paint colors, the tiny clothes, the future he let himself imagine, none of it was real. She did not just lie to him. She used the one dream he wanted most and turned it into a leash. The final blow comes when Isabella admits she never even cared about Sandro. He was only the first door. Raphael was the easier one to break. She used his resentment, his loneliness, and his craving for a name that felt secure. Raphael realizes, with a sick drop in his stomach, that he plotted to murder his own brother for a woman who planned to wipe out his entire bloodline. Then he sees Emma tied to a chair, beaten and barely conscious. She was never part of this war. Not really. Yet she is sitting there because of choices Raphael made while chasing a love that never existed. Raphael collapses against the concrete wall, shaking so hard he can barely breathe. Memories of Sandro break through the fog. He remembers his brother taking beatings from their father to protect him. He remembers small acts of loyalty he had mistaken for distance. Sandro paid Elena's medical bills in secret. Sandro stood in the back of the church because he did not know how to step closer, not because he felt nothing. Raphael finally sees the shape of his mistake. His brother loved badly, coldly from too far away. But he loved him. And Raphael answered that love by helping Isabella put him in the ground. Raphael stumbles out through the loading dock in a daze and drives through Chicago like the city belongs to someone else. He passes places from his childhood, the bakery, the brownstone, the church where the crack between him and Sandro first widened. His mind keeps returning to one clean memory of the two of them riding bikes before violence took over their lives. When he reaches the edge of Lake Michigan, he parks and grips the steering wheel until his hands hurt. For years, he thought distance from Sandro would free him from pain. Now he understands the pain was never behind him. It had been riding beside him the whole time. Raphael has been trapped inside the old wound of being the unwanted son. Sandro became the older brother who shut down after their mother died. For 20 years, both of them mistook silence for strength. Sandro gave Raphael's worst fear room to grow. That he was not really family, not really loved, not really enough. Isabella only stepped into a wound that was already open. By the water, Raphael finally stops defending himself. He sees the whole thing clearly, and it nearly destroys him. Then he turns the car around and drives back toward the Romano estate. Not to bargain, not to lie, but to confess. At 11 that night, Raphael arrives at the estate alone. No guards, no armor, no performance. The gates open, and Joe Bruno is waiting with a gun drawn. Joe has been Sandra's shadow since Sandro was a boy, and his aim does not waver. Raphael raises his hands. Tears streak his face as he begs to tell them about Emma. Joe studies him and sees the difference immediately. This is not a man staging an attack. This is a man surrendering. Joe leads him into the study. The wheelchair is empty. Sandro is standing over a map, fully upright, every trace of the helpless act gone. Sandro looks up. Unreadable. Raphael collapses onto the rug and spills everything. He tells him how Isabella played him. How O'Brien took Emma. Where the warehouse sits. How the guards rotate. Where the weak entrance is. How much time they have before the deadline closes. Sandro listens without interrupting. Behind the coldness, relief moves through him so sharply it almost hurts. His brother has finally stopped lying. Raphael looks up and offers his life for one chance to lead them through those doors. It is not enough to erase what he did, and he knows that. It is only the first honest thing he has done in a long time. Sandro stares down at Raphael. But for a moment he no longer sees the grown man on the floor. He sees a frightened child at Elena's funeral, waiting for an older brother who never came close enough. Sandro asks him to repeat the last clear thing their mother ever said. Raphael can barely get the words out. Remember your true family. Sandro reaches down and pulls him to his feet. His voice is hard, but it is not empty. He gives Raphael one chance to make it right and bring Emma home. Raphael breaks down and swears that if he takes a bullet tonight, he will take it as Sandro's brother. Raphael admits he followed Isabella because he felt worthless. Sandro does not deny his part in it. He says he helped build the emptiness she used against him. Then, for the first time in 15 years, the brothers hold each other. It is awkward, desperate, and too late to be simple. But it is real. In the hall, Joe Bruno turns away and quietly gathers himself. By 3 a.m, everything is moving. 25 armed men roll into the South Side night. Sandro is at the front. No wheelchair, no mask, a Glock strapped to his chest. Raphael leads them toward an off-the-books drainage pipe by the river. O'Brien's arrogance becomes the gap in his armor. He believes he knows every entrance, every guard post, every path through the warehouse. He does not know about the old tunnel Raphael hid months earlier. Maybe because some part of Raphael always needed an escape route from the darkness he had chosen. At exactly 3:14 a.m., they kick in the loading dock doors, and the warehouse erupts. Gunfire cracks against concrete. Glass rains down. Sandro's crew moves with brutal discipline, not panic. Nathan drags wounded men back while Sandro pushes straight through the middle, eyes fixed on the place where Emma is being held. Sandro drops the first man without slowing, but he misses the shooter in the blind spot. Joe Bruno does not. He steps into the line of fire and takes 3 bullets meant for Sandro. The old bodyguard falls, and Sandro catches him before he hits the floor. For a second, the entire fight seems to mute around them. Joe looks up, blood on his lips, and tells Sandro to protect Emma. It is the same kind of order he once gave a 12-year-old boy who had no idea how much protection would cost. Sandro lowers his forehead to Joe's chest. When he stands again, the grief has gone quiet. Raphael reaches the holding area first. He takes down 3 guards with terrifying focus, moving like a man who has already decided what his life is worth. Inside the room, Emma is curled against the ropes, expecting another monster to enter. When the door bursts open, the man standing there is covered in blood and crying. Raphael cuts the ropes from her wrists with shaking hands. In that moment, he's not the brother who betrayed Sandro or the fool Isabella used. He is a damaged man trying to do one clean thing before the end catches him. He tells Emma he is sorry, and for once the apology costs him something. Raphael looks Emma in the eye and admits enough for her to understand the weight of what he has done. Then he tells her to run. They move into the main hallway just as Declan O'Brien appears, wild with rage, gun aimed at Sandro's head. Raphael does not hesitate. He throws himself into the line of fire. The shot meant for his brother hits him instead, and he crashes to the concrete. Sandro's face changes in a way no one in that warehouse has ever seen. Raphael wanted one chance to choose his family. He gets it, but the price is blood. Second Raphael hits the floor, Sandro becomes terrifyingly calm. 3 shots take O'Brien down center mass. The old rival falls before he can raise the gun again, but the nightmare is not over. Isabella steps from the shadows, unhinged and furious, a knife flashing in her hand as she lunges for Emma. Sandro intercepts her midair and slams her onto the concrete for one breath. Everyone expects him to kill her. He does not. He sees for the first time, not just a monster but a woman raised to become one. That does not excuse her. It only makes the punishment colder. He pins her down and refuses to give her the death she can turn into a legend. Isabella screams that her syndicate will burn him down. She tries to hurt him with Raphael's name, saying his brother was born to die. Sandro gives her nothing, no argument, no fury, not even the satisfaction of pain. His men drag her away as she keeps shouting. Sandro is already on the phone, cutting a deal with the federal agents waiting outside the edges of the operation. Isabella will live long enough to lose everything in a courtroom, including the family myth that made her believe cruelty was destiny. For a man like Sandro, that is a harder choice than revenge. A quick death would be easy. Watching her become powerless will last much longer. Raphael is bleeding out on the warehouse floor. All the swagger, all the resentment, all the hunger for power has fallen away. What remains is a frightened man who only wanted to belong somewhere. He looks at Sandro and admits he just wanted to be seen. Sandro's walls finally break. He kneels beside his brother and sobs in a way no one has heard from him in 20 years. He says he was wrong. He says he treated his own blood like a burden. Raphael's eyes begin to drift, and his mind seems to reach backward through time. He asks if Sandro thinks he will see their mother again. In his final moments, Raphael does not ask for revenge. He asks for his mother. Emma kneels beside him, bruised and shaking, and gives him the comfort the room has no right to contain. She tells him their mothers will hold them. Raphael looks at Sandro. No longer a soldier, no longer a traitor, just a little brother at the edge of the dark. He asks him to plant a tomato plant. Then he breathes out and smiles faintly, as if he is 6 years old again and trusting Sandro to catch him. Sandro holds his body in the wreckage, rocking him without words. There are no speeches left, only loss. Isabella's empire begins collapsing almost immediately. Once her leverage is gone, the loyalty around her turns thin and frightened. The O'Brien Syndicate, which terrorized Chicago for 40 years, starts dissolving within minutes. Federal agents sweep up what remains over the next 72 hours. Sandro refuses to leave Raphael behind. He places his brother in a black AUV beside Joe Bruno, the bodyguard who died protecting him. 2 men, flawed in different ways, both tied to him by love and bloodshed. At 5 a.m, the car moves back toward Lake Forest. Sandro holds Emma's hand tightly. No one speaks. Survival has left them too tired for victory. 3 months later, Chicago begins to thaw. Sandro does too, slowly and unevenly. He buries Raphael at Mount Carmel Cemetery beside their mother. The headstone says only that he found his way home. It is Sandro's attempt to give his brother, at least in death, the belonging he failed to give him in life, to carry the guilt. He puts $10 million into a foundation for abandoned children and gets 47 of them off the streets. It does not erase anything. Sandro knows that, but it gives his grief somewhere to go. He cannot save the boy Raphael was. So he starts saving children who are still within reach. Isabella faces federal charges that will keep her locked away for life. Even Maggie Voss turns on her, testifying that Raphael was Isabella's victim as much as her accomplice. Sandro begins pulling his money out of the bloodier corners of the empire and moving into legitimate real estate. It is not a clean transformation, and the past does not vanish because paperwork changes. But the direction is different. Emma, meanwhile, finishes her first year of nursing school with top grades. Sandro pays her tuition, but she keeps firm boundaries. She buys her own scrubs with her own money. She will accept help, but she will not become another possession in a beautiful room. Emma has a room of her own now, warm and beautiful, though most nights she sleeps beside Sandro because neither of them likes waking alone. In May, he takes her to the garden and shows her a small tomato plant growing beside a plaque for Raphael. He kept his brother's dying wish. Then he hands Emma a little clay pot and says, "One for you. It is a small thing, almost ordinary, and that is what makes it matter." They are trying to grow something living out of all that ruin. That night, Sandro hosts dinner on the terrace. No mobsters, no hidden weapons. Just the strange, scarred family that remains. During dinner, Sandro places a framed photograph of Raphael beside an empty plate. No one jokes about it. No one looks away. For once, he lets grief sit at the table instead of burying it under anger. After dinner, he takes Emma to the balcony overlooking the city. A year earlier, he had ruled that city and trusted no one inside it. Now he hands her a small box containing 2 ceramic mugs that say "Forever Mornings." He tells her she changed the way he understood power. It was never about making people fear him. It was about having someone who wanted him to come home. Then he lowers himself to one knee. The ring is not the kind anyone would expect from a mafia boss. It is modest, simple and almost painfully honest. Sandro opens the box and asks, "Will you brew coffee with me every morning?" Emma reaches out and cups his face. She is not looking at the legend Chicago feared. She is looking at the man who planted tomatoes for his brother. The man who learned too late what silence can destroy, and still chose to change. She smiles and says yes, forever. Emma did not choose him because he was powerful. She chose the part of him that finally stopped hiding behind power. If this story leaves anything behind, it is not the violence or the empire. It is the image of wounded people trying, badly and honestly, to become something better than what hurt them. Sandro does not become innocent. Emma does not forget the danger. Raphael does not return. Isabella does not stop being responsible for what she became. But love, grief, and guilt force each of them to face the truth they spent years avoiding. If Sandro and Emma's journey stayed with you, subscribe and tap the bell for more stories like this. Like the video. Share it with someone who believes broken people can still change. And tell me in the comments which moment hit you the hardest.